Hello and welcome to the Business of Story, your resource to help you and your people excel through the stories you tell. Hi, I'm Park Howell, and I'm so glad you're here. Have you ever found yourself doing something one way, but it never really quite worked for you, so you had to find another way? My guest, Robert Wolfe, suffered through the misery of most board meetings until he and his partners, including one of my favorite actors and philanthropists, Edward Norton, reimagined the miserable board meeting process with their new company called Zeck. Now, Robert knows a thing or two about launching startups and building them to profitable exits. He was the founder and former CEO of MooseJaw, and his goal was to make retail e-commerce fun and engaging again with his outdoor apparel company. Then he started the crowdfunding platform Crowd Rise. Well, Walmart bought MooseJaw and GoFundMe bought Crowd Rise. So today, you will learn how he does it with irreverent brand storytelling to remind us all to have some fun and be a little foolish in our way over serious world. I just finished reading Cormac McCarthy's final two books called Passenger and Stella Maris, which to me are kind of nihilistic meditations on the mathematical certainty of death. Yeah. Fun stuff, huh? Well, McCarthy sneaks in witticisms throughout his writing. There's one thought he shared that I can't shake. It goes like this, quote, "You shouldn't worry about what people think about you because they don't do it that often." I thought it was pretty hysterical given our narcissistic social media world we all compete for attention in today. But you want your brand story to stand out. You want to draw rapt attention to your product or service offering. You even worry about how it's being communicated because you want people to think of you often. Now you can be certain that your brand story is hitting on all cylinders with our new Story Cycle Genie. You feed the Genie your website and a couple of your marketing materials, and in under 30 seconds, it will reveal your entire current story following our Story Cycle system, which has grown brands by as much as 600%. Then you can refine the narrative to identify your number one position in the market, your top three audiences, their challenges, fears, frustrations, and aspirations that you can use as story levers in your content marketing. The Genie will provide you options on your unique value proposition and even create landing page content for you based on your new refined brand story. Plus, it does a bunch more in minutes, not months, turning your minutia that you used to have to wade through into inertia that operationalizes your refined brand story immediately. You can check it out at businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie. That's all one word, storycycle-genie. It's like how today's guest has turned the mind-numbing, exhausting process of board meetings into uber efficiency and productivity. That's what we've done with our Story Cycle Genie. We've taken the antiquated process of brand story strategy development and bottled it in an AI agent so you can let your brand genius out of the bottle and gain the attention you deserve. Again, in minutes, not months. So check it out at businessofstory.com/storycycle-genie.
Humbly, that's why Zeck is built, is because the communication between the leadership team and the board is the tools we are using to solve that are entirely archaic and not even meant to solve that problem in the first place. Yet we continue to use them in the exact same way that I'm friends with people at DocuSign. I mean, the vitriol that they had to go through to get, you think about a group of attorneys to get people to go from ink and paper to electronic was 10,000 times harder than what we're dealing with. But anytime you're trying to change someone's behavior, it's challenging.
After spending time as an operator running board meetings and on the other side of the table as a board member, Robert launched Zeck to change the process entirely. Zeck transforms the dynamic between the leadership team and the board, making board meetings strategic and forward-thinking. Never again will you get into a board meeting to have a deck that you already read back to you. Talk about mind-numbing. Such a waste of time. The funny thing about Robert is that he has zero interests or hobbies and is a terrible sleeper. He's been an advisor to several companies and is faster than Usain Bolt at replying to any message. I've seen that myself, and I'm kind of blown away by it, actually. But publicly, Robert only boasts about his honorable mention for being the best break dancer using an old school cardboard mat. So, with all that, here's Robert. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And you're looking a lot better since the last time I saw you. We tried to record this a few weeks ago, and you had both pink eye and tonsillitis, and I'm like, what, are you still in the third grade, or what's going on?
That's exactly right. I did do another podcast with the pink eye, and it basically, pink eye turned into the theme of the podcast. So I don't know if it will end up going over particularly well. I was quite a mess.
Well, I love your personality because of how you approach that whole thing, and we, pushed our recording off to today. And I liked it too because I started doing research for that initial interview on one of your first big endeavors of MooseJaw mountaineering and how you approach that business model and that brand with what I take away as your own unique, fun, whimsical personality. Can you give us a little bit of a backstory on you and the creation of MooseJaw?
Yeah, so I went to Michigan, and I was always the kid who, before the games, I was walking around the golf course selling T-shirts, and I went to the Final Four and didn't have money to get a ticket or a hotel, and I made a box full of T-shirts and drove to Minneapolis and sat in front of the hotel where all the coaches were staying and just and swapped T-shirts. So it's something that I feel like I just sort of always had in me. I love being creative, and at MooseJaw, I'm a big believer in luck, and I feel like we got really lucky at MooseJaw and throughout all my businesses. But at MooseJaw, we didn't know the rules to break. So we had one tiny store. It was 1,400 square feet in a place called Kego Harbor, Michigan, which very few people have heard of. And I was the kid who, I wouldn't go to the mall with my mom, right? I hated shopping, and I didn't know the rules to break. So when people would come into our shop,
And what was MooseJaw? It was just so we set a level here. What is MooseJaw?
So MooseJaw, we sell North Face, Patagonia, Arc'teryx, brands like that. We were acquired by Walmart, and then last year we were acquired by Dick's Sporting Goods. So it's been quite a journey. But in those very early days, when people would come into the shop, I would say to them, "Do you want to go play home run derby in the parking lot?" And that wasn't to try to get them to buy something. I genuinely wanted to play home. We had it set up. I wanted to play home run derby in the parking lot. And I think now people call that experiential retail. But we had 14, we were mostly an e-commerce business, but we had 14 shops. Every one of them had a ping pong table inside. And most people said, you cannot waste that valuable space for a ping pong table. But I love ping pong. And so this idea of connecting with the customer about something that didn't have to do with the product actually ended up resonating. And once we were able to look at data to see how all of that worked, not only in retail but in e-commerce, we really tried to press that. So we called it MooseJaw Madness, and it became a very important part of our brand. It was polarizing. We were crazy. Some of the stuff we did you couldn't do today, but our customers, it became sort of cultish.
Yeah. So you went to University of Michigan. You were selling T-shirts, which, by the way, you and I have that in common. I did a lot of that kind of sort of solopreneur, completely broke ways of trying to make money, selling T-shirts being just one of them. What led you, though, to start MooseJaw? You said you would go to malls with your mom reluctantly, and you weren't crazy about buying in retail. Why'd you get in the retail business?
I was a backpacker, and I loved the outdoors. And a friend of mine actually owned a guide service and took school groups on trips. And a friend and I were working for his company, and we would send the people to get their gear lists to one store in town, and and it wasn't a particularly fun experience, and it really started off as a joke. Okay, do we want to open a store to start accommodating for this? And as we continued to do more and more research, we thought it was a good idea. So it was really lucky, and opened this shop with one of my best friends in the world who actually didn't love retail. He ended up leaving, and longer term, I had a sister and then a brother who came into the business with me.
Yeah. And how did you build the brand to the point that you got the attention of Walmart?
Relentlessly. We were maniacal about brand. I think this may sound crazy, but nothing we did would nothing went out without we had rules in place without it reflecting in some way on the brand. So we, unlike most retailers, we didn't use any photography from Patagonia or North Face, even though they spent millions and millions of dollars sending people all over the world. For us, you were always the models were always in a MooseJaw t-shirt or hat, maybe with a North Face jacket over it, but we never sent out a photo without someone in MooseJaw. And we were foolish and irreverent and a little crazy. So every single thing we did was always tagged with something that we thought was notable enough that you would share it with your friends.
Give us an example of that.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple. One that I always loved is when the economy went to hell in 2008, 2009. We sent a catalog, and the whole thing, we called it the No Pants catalog. And the whole theme was, we understand that it's rough right now. We don't expect you to buy pants, but at least buy a sweatshirt or a hoodie or a jacket. And we had 100 models in the catalog. Not one of them was wearing pants. We did not have a pair of shorts or a pair of pants in the catalog. So that one, you don't typically see that from a retail, other than, I suppose, if it was Victoria's Secret. So that was one that was notable. Another, we had a MooseJaw truck. We eventually had trucks that would go between the shops. And on the back of the truck, you could Google this because people have shared it over and over. The back of the truck said, "Driver carries less than $50 and is totally naked." And you couldn't do this today, but our first driver, he was this big guy and he loved it. And he would drive around with no shirt on. So people would see the back of the truck and pull up next to him and see someone that you thought was naked. And people would take pictures of it. It was great. It was super fun.
Can you send me some pictures of those? I would love to put them in the
Absolutely.
show notes. Number one, your No Pants catalog. If you got an
I-
image of one of those, and if you got a picture of the back of that truck, email that to me. I want to put it in the show notes for our folks to listen to.
Great.
So it sounds to me like your brand was not developed as like this strategic mastermind thing, as much as it was just an extension of who you are and how you like to go through life.
Well, yes, but I think it wasn't just me; it was our team.
Yeah.
So we tried to surround ourselves with people who lived the brand, and so the person who runs brand at our current company, Zeck, for example, she ran our brand at MooseJaw. She ran our brand at our next company, Crowd Rise, and at Zeck. And so many people at our new company worked at both MooseJaw and Crowd Rise, or one of the two companies. So we've just been phenomenally lucky to surround ourselves with just awesome, fun people.
Yeah. How long did you own Moose Jaw before you sold it?
I got to do the math on that. 25 years.
Oh, okay. So it's been around a while. And was it a national? Must have been a national brand.
Yeah, so we had 14 stores, but probably 85% of the business was online. So we were really I fell in love with the internet, just the branding that you could do online. I think that the stores, we loved them, but it's always really hard for us. And we just all fell in love with e-commerce.
Yeah. Now, a brand like Dick's Sporting Goods, who ultimately owns Moose Jaw, they already sell all this stuff. Why? What was in it for them to buy your old brand?
I think it's changed a lot. I think the landscape since COVID and in the outdoor space is very different than it was during COVID, where the outdoor space was as hot as it could possibly be. Because if you wanted to buy a bike or a kayak, that was the time to do it. I don't know the answer. My guess is they wanted to compete with REI, but I really don't know that. That's pure conjecture.
Gotcha. So you moved on to a company called Crowd Rise.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that transition and what is Crowd Rise?
So CrowdRise was a fundraising platform for charities to raise money. So we worked with hundreds or thousands of charities you've never heard of, but we were also the fundraising platform for Red Cross, UNICEF, pretty much every notable marathon, Ironman, American Cancer Society, and we were acquired by GoFundMe. And our idea at CrowdRise, we wanted to do something great for the world, and have an impact. And we started looking at the giving space and thought that it was burdensome and guilt ridden. And we thought, okay, if we can take some of these lessons from MooseJaw and make giving back fun, then people would give more money to the causes they cared about. They would do it more often, and most importantly, they would share it so that cause could become social. And if you think about 2010, it was sort of tactless to tell people how you gave back. No one did that. And now you can't scroll on social media for more than 10 seconds without seeing how someone is giving to a cause they care about. And if you think about the impact of that for something like the fires in California right now, it's pretty dramatic. So again, for us, it was how do we make giving back fun?
And why was that? What of interest to you? I mean, where did that come from?
Well, I think that when you're really lucky, it's your responsibility to give back. And that was important to us. And we wanted to find an interesting way to do it that could perhaps have in some very small way, change the world. And humbly, I think we played a small part in that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was our intention. But it was super, super hard. All of this is, I mean, I know
It
you're
is, isn't
live
it?
this. This stuff is impossible. Clearly there is something wrong with me to be doing this a third time.
You know, there's a fantastic book out there that I've read now 2 times, working on number 3, and I'm using the frameworks in it because we are launching an AI app for
Uh-huh.
my story cycle system, taking basically 20 years of our expertise, bottling it up in this AI agent, and releasing it as what we call the story cycle genie that will basically let your brand genius out of the bottle in under an hour when you go through this. Well, I've been reading this book called The Right It.
Okay.
And it is absolutely fantastic. And Alberto, who wrote the book, he was with Google, one of their first innovation engineers back in the day, and teaches at Stanford. He said, "Look the chances of your idea succeeding are like 1%. It's the beast of failure," he talks about. And so he shows you how to do prototyping, not prototyping, prototyping in very fast, affordable, extraordinarily effective ways to make sure that you are bringing to market the right idea.
Right.
So to your point, when you say luck has a big part of it, he says so too in that book, but he also says preparation and truly your own research where you see people actually interacting with your brand or service is going to help you be luckier to overcome that beast of failure. So I hear
Yes.
you. I wanted to ask you one more question before we go on to Zeck about CrowdRise. You said that you wanted to give back. You guys had a lot of success and you felt like it was important to have your impact in the world and you wanted to make it fun. What did you do to make giving, fundraising fun?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll tell you our slogan, which was on every page, was "If you don't give back, no one will like you." And I will tell you the very first organization we met with was American Cancer Society, and they quite literally laughed us out of the room. And we skewed very young. And 4 or 5 years later, because we became the platform for younger people to donate and fundraise, American Cancer Society came back to us and said, "Hey, we don't want to be a graying organization. Let's talk again." So I think what we were doing was typically when you would go to donate to charity, you wouldn't see Wedding Crashers or an old school or an Anchorman quote on the page. But when you went to CrowdRise, you did. And we had a loyalty program. So when you donated or raised money for a cause you cared about, you earned points, and we turned those points into t-shirts and hoodies. And so we really tried to again have more of an e-commerce Patagonia MooseJaw like mindset when it came to giving back. And the idea was that you would be proud to give back and tell your friends about it. Well, how are we going to possibly accomplish that? And for us, it was, we're going to make it fun, because if you like it, you'll do it more often. So we were, it was the same kind of craziness that we had at MooseJaw applied to a new space.
Yeah. It's kind of surprising to me that American Cancer Society would push back on your initial introduction to them. I love that idea. If you don't give back, no one will like you. Do you remember the campaign that they came out with maybe 15 years ago about the American Cancer Society being the official sponsor of birthdays?
The genius. Absolutely.
It's absolute genius.
Right.
So I'm surprised that an organization that can come up with that kind of campaign branding and messaging would push back on having fun with you guys.
You know what? I think that there was some vitriol around the idea that you could sort of poke fun while you're raising money for very serious causes. And I think that's changed a lot. If you think about the Ice Bucket Challenge, for example, if you had said to someone prior to that campaign, hey, we're going to raise awareness by getting people to pour water on their head, people would have said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. But everyone wanted to out ice bucket each other. So this idea that there is something in it for me, I'm going to show my friends how fun I can be, resonated. And so I feel like the world has changed in terms of how people feel about what is acceptable when raising money for charity.
Yeah. And that Ice Bucket Challenge was sort of an organic phenomenon, right? It wasn't didn't come out of a board meeting on marketing. It didn't come out of some brilliant creative team. It came out of an individual that got it going, and like a snowball running downhill, it just took off.
Not only an individual who got it going, but someone who is living that problem got it going. So it wasn't, to your point, it wasn't a couple MBAs saying, hey, we have a cool idea, who hadn't lived the problem they were trying to solve. It was someone who was deeply entrenched in that world. So it was, everything about it was positive.
And authentic.
Yes.
Absolutely authentic. Yeah. So you've had a very eclectic backstory upbringing in brand development, startup world, and having a lot of lucky success to use your terms along the way. So going from selling T-shirts at University of Michigan to get into events, to MooseJaw, that you then sell to Walmart, to Crowd Rise, and now completely, let's go stage left again, Zeck, which is, as I understand it, presentation software for particularly the niche of board meetings.
Yeah, we're really trying to reimagine the entire board meeting process, and coincidentally relates to what I was just talking about, Ice Bucket Challenge, because we had lived that problem. So as challenging and as hard as everything was at MooseJaw and Crowd Rise, there was nothing that was more stressful for us than the whole board meeting process. So at both companies, our team would spend 100 and 150 hours building these board presentations that were bad, right? You couldn't read them on your phone. You couldn't collaborate with them in any way. But the very worst part was, and at Crowd Rise, we had these very famous, notable board members. And we would send them the board deck, and we'd meet in New York or LA or San Francisco and get in the room, and everyone would prepare for this grandiose meeting. And we would get in the room, and I would simply reread the board a deck that they had already read. So the process from start to finish was a waste of time for everyone. We genuinely thought we were the only ones in the world who were bad at it. And it wasn't until after our companies were acquired and we sort of got out there in the world did we realize this angst was universal. So we started researching the space and came to the conclusion that no one was solving it. And for us, really the through line is we thought, okay, we now find ourselves in a space that's miserable again. Can we take these lessons from MooseJaw and Crowd Rise and apply them to a new space? And maybe we can't make board meetings fun, but at least we can make them less miserable.
Yeah. And you've got the famous actor Edward Norton involved in this. Was he one of the board members at Crowd Rise, and he experienced the same thing with you all and said, yeah, you got something here?
Yeah. So Edward and I and my brother and Edward's wife were actually, the four of us were co-founders of Crowd Rise. And so we were not only in the board meetings, but also all operators. So Edward has seen this from both sides, and he is certainly not just the face of either company. He's deeply entrenched. In fact, I think people would be shocked if they knew how involved Edward really is, which again is super lucky for us. But can we go back? What was your question again? I can't even. I'm ranting so much I can't even remember.
Yeah, no. It was like, how did you get someone like an Edward Norton to go in business with? It's such a kind of weird product. I mean, really a very, very niche product.
In fact, I think the juxtaposition of someone like Edward being involved in a product around board meetings has that irony has been good for us because it makes people more interested. But so we worked together at our prior company. We had experienced this, what I would call misery of the board meeting. And when we were actually on a trip together, and I had to leave to go to a board meeting while everyone was having fun. And I came back and I said, that was the most miserable 3 hours of my life. And I literally said, Edward, do you remember that scene in Fight Club when you were punching yourself in the face? That's how I think everyone felt. And that was really at that moment we started doing more research.
Yeah. And so he said, you're right. You've got something going here. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, we all started doing the research together, actually. So Edward reached out to some people in his community. And I remember someone said, basically a VC, a professional board member, when talking about governance specifically, he said that if you can solve the voting, the amount of time wasted so simply on voting during a board meeting, I'm in and I will put this in front of every one of my portfolio companies. That's the kind of feedback we heard day one. So we know that the problem is real. Whether this was when we first thought of it, whether we could go and solve it was a whole nother story, because that's really hard. That's what we're in the process of trying to do.
Yeah. So take us through the brand development process that you did with Zeck, and where did the Zeck name come from?
So Zeck, it really turned into this idea. It's not a deck, it's a Zeck. So if you think about PowerPoint and Google Slides, they are awesome for a TED Talk. They are great for a presentation when it's one to many and you don't need any kind of collaboration. But you could build a PowerPoint tomorrow and look at a PowerPoint you made 20 years ago. You wouldn't know which is which. It just, that hasn't modernized, but the way we communicate has. So if you think about DocuSign, you would never, when you remember getting those packets with a million little tabs and someone would mail it to you and you'd have to sign everything and send them back in a FedEx, you would never do that today, right? And so at Zeck, we're trying to modernize the entire board meeting process. But again, it's challenging.
So you're saying you're not creating a PowerPoint deck anymore. You are creating a Zeck.
That's right.
That is much more interactive, I guess. I mean, what are the main features of Zeck?
Well, first, on the content creation side, we're saving teams probably 80% of their time, both because we have guardrails in place. So you don't have to hire a graphic designer. You don't have to decide where do the little circles or squares go in your rectangle of your slide presentation. And also we have gone deeply down the AI path. And I actually think that board meetings and investor updates are a really nice use case for AI. And it is mind-blowing how awesome it is. So one, we're saving teams time. Two, you're sending a superior presentation to your board. So where do you read your news in the morning?
Typically jump on LinkedIn first and foremost, then over to the Arizona Republic, and then the New York Times, pretty much in that order.
So if you imagine waking up in the morning and reading the Arizona Republic or the New York Times in a PowerPoint, you would never do it, right? Zeck looks exactly like the New York Times. That's the way people read now. And I'll take it one step further. Imagine waking up imagine that journalist writing the article for the New York Times waking up and having to write that in PowerPoint. It would never happen. So you are writing in more of a blog style also. But then most importantly, the board and the leadership team are communicating asynchronously prior to the meeting. So when you get into the live meeting, you're wasting zero time rereading anything. It's entirely strategic and forward thinking. So if you think about it, there was nothing better to happen to us than the mess that happened with the OpenAI board meeting, because that was all a a lack of communication and this natural antagonism between the leadership team and the board. Zeck eliminates that.
And this is when they were going to toss Altman, right?
They
Said, you're
did
out of
toss
here
him, yeah.
because we don't
So
trust you. They
exactly,
did toss him, right? And
right?
then they brought him back. And do
Exactly.
you think that Zeck could have diffused that before it happened?
Humbly, that's why Zeck is built, is
Mm-hmm.
because the communication between the leadership team and the board is the tools we are using to solve that are entirely archaic and not even meant to solve that problem in the first place. Yet we continue to use them in the exact same way that I'm friends with people at DocuSign. I mean, the vitriol that they had to go through to get, you think about a group of attorneys, to get people to go from ink and paper to electronic was 10,000 times harder than what we're dealing with. But anytime you're trying to change someone's behavior, it's challenging.
Yeah. So it sounds like Zeck is dealing and working within a very serious confines of board meetings and smart people, and they don't want to put up with a bunch of, witty stuff. They got to get down to governance, and it's all so damn serious. Let's make this happen, right? So how do you bring fun to that, or do you? Is Zeck a reflection of kind of the fun you've had with your past brands?
It's a great question, because when we launched, the answer was no. We're not going to go down that path, because we are essentially building, or the software builds microsites for each individual company and nonprofit, right? So it is not like Crowd Rise in that it is public. It's all very private. But as we started to inject our personality into the messaging, the feedback was so universally positive that we decided, you know what, we're gonna start taking next steps here. And then we went out and hired the woman who ran brand at our prior two companies and decided to just unleash hell. And the feedback has been so awesome. I will tell you one example. We send companies cookies prior to their board meeting, and the cookies, they're not just normal cookies that you'd pick up. We make these custom cookies, and one of them says, here is literally, it says on the cookie, here is a cookie to whip at your most unproductive board member. And there is a public company that uses Zeck that is one of the biggest, it's a financial institution. If you watch the NFL games this weekend, you'll see their commercials. Nobody liked the cookies better than them. So if you think about people, just if you can make these meetings more fun, they will be more productive. So we've started to pursue that more aggressively.
Is it Allison Capaldi who you're speaking about as your brand?
Yes.
She's going to be on the show in a couple of weeks. She and I have had the same challenge you and I have had of scheduling, rescheduling, and I was going to interview her next Monday, but I now have to fly off to Austin for a business of story training, which is going to be fun. So Allison and I are going to reschedule in a week or two. But I can't wait to hear,
because the microphone.
What's that?
She's the one who made me get the microphone.
Well, I made her to get the microphone, I think, for the first time around.
Well, I've used it more than once, so I appreciate it.
Good. Well, we want to have the best audio quality we possibly can here. Right. So I'm looking forward to speaking with her, because she has what I guess she calls kind of this wedding cake
her layer
strategy, a layered cake strategy to building. You want to give us a little teaser on that so people will tune in to Allison in a few weeks?
I don't want to steal her thunder, but there's a whole sort of peeling back the onion philosophy that she has around brand. And I think for us, what we've learned is that you have to have systems around this, or it becomes too haphazard. And Al is not only amazing at being the voice of the brand, but building systems so that you can do it well and responsibly. So, and again, this is not something that she learned in school. I mean, we have built this together along with a broader team over the course of the last 20 years. And we are maniacal about our systems.
Yeah. So of your three brands that you've brought to market, MooseJaw, Crowd Rise, and now Zeck, which one have you had most fun with? Or which one's most near and dear to your heart?
Well, MooseJaw was the first, so MooseJaw was the baby. But they were all, I mean, the stories we could tell are so crazy. Do you know what Giving Tuesday is?
Yeah, that's when you are invited to give on a
Yeah.
Tuesday.
So Giving
Is
Tuesday,
it
it comes
right
after
after
Cyber
Thanksgiving,
Monday.
right?
Yeah, it comes right after
Yep.
Cyber Monday. And our idea was that this is a day where every organization is raising money for their cause, but no one is tracking this in aggregate and understanding the real impact of Giving Tuesday. So we decided to go after that, and we built something that we called the Giving Tower. Okay, and the
And this is
Giving
at Moose Jaw,
this was at
right?
Crowd Rise.
Oh, this is
So
Crowd Rise
this
now.
is Crowd
Okay,
Rise.
okay.
So we had all the organizations, so thousands of organizations embrace this Giving Tower idea. And when you donated there was a brick that got added to the tower, and we built this tower in virtual reality. So the world could watch this tower being built, and we had a version of it at the airport in Houston. We had a version of it in Herald Square in New York. So we really tried to turn this into a big deal. We were on the Today Show, but the first year we did it, the app didn't work. It was went to look at the tower, it was real shaky. And so this is right before Giving Tuesday. I mean, we have the Red Cross is relying on us. So how are we going to solve this? And we turned the whole campaign into the shaky Giving Tower. And and that was, I think, indicative of the craziness, and the kind of stories that you just can't make up. So that
Yeah.
was, all of it is fun and crazy.
And you got to go with the flow. You got to get your ego out of the way and say, you know what? We've got a shaky tower. Let's embrace the shaky tower and have some
That's right.
fun.
We certainly have no pride. That is part of the company culture.
And you said CrowdRise was purchased by GoFundMe, correct?
Yes.
Do you know Brittany Cabrielas over there at GoFundMe?
No, I don't
She was one of their,
think so.
yeah, she's head of social media at
Okay.
GoFundMe. And I had her on my show,
Oh,
show
awesome.
number 404.
Wow.
So about a year and a half ago. And she was a
Okay.
great, great interview. And she shared with us on that show of how they at GoFundMe turn moments into movements
Yes.
using their social media storytelling. And kind of that's what you're talking about. You had this moment of the shaky tower and you're playing off the movement, and your whole idea is to amplify that movement and raise even more money for folks like American Cancer Society.
Yes. And though the team at GoFundMe, they're brilliant when it comes to that. And there's such a fine line between marketing and appropriately when you're raising money for cause, and they invented it. They're the best at it. So I think she was probably after my time, but
Mm.
I'm still in touch. I was trading emails with the COO of GoFundMe today, her name's Soraya Alexander. She is a force. So they're particularly now in times of crisis, and they happen too often. GoFundMe is just, it's an amazing resource for the whole world.
Really is. So what's next for you and Zeck?
All in on Zach. I mean, what has been really exciting for us, and I know this is probably boring, but I do think our use case is so great for AI, and so we'll continue to go down that path. I'll give an example. The number one angst amongst our customers is building charts and graphs. Everyone hates building those infographics, and it's tough to do it in Excel and PowerPoint. So we recently launched AI generated charts and graphs. I mean, it is so cool. I mean, David Blaine is actually an investor in Zach. Long story, but we were talking about, we got to get Blaine to promote it because it's like magic. That's what it's like. It is really,
Mm-hmm.
really cool. So we'll continue to go down that path, and also we never want to believe our own bullshit. So our roadmap is very customer driven.
Yeah. Well, I know it. I mean, I've seen what has been happening with our Story Cycle Genie. To your point, think about when doing your branding, it probably took you several months and probably tens of thousands of dollars to get it to where you want it. And even then, you're kind of crossing your fingers to make sure you got it right. But so many people come to me and say, it's an exhausting process and I don't have that amount of time. I need to run my company, to do this. And to be able to do like what you have done is take that whole story cycle system process, which has grown brands by as much as 600%,
Wow.
bottle it up, and people can do it in under an hour now.
That's
All
amazing.
that discovery and research in how the brand is showing up in the world compared to their competition and where you need to be revising your story in under an hour. And
That's
I wasn't a
amazing.
huge believer in AI until Sean Schroeder, my tech guy who had
Uh-huh.
been through my manual process, came to me and says, we need to build an agent out of this. And we
That's
have.
awesome.
And so I'm with you.
Yeah.
And when I take people through it, their eyes wide up. They say mind blowing. They say astounding. And I'm sure this is the kind of stuff you're experiencing too, because AI and these large language models make your life so much easier when you use them right.
Yeah, it's really crazy, and we never want to lose that human element because so we tell people this will get you our work will get you about 80% of the way there, which is still amazing if you think about teams spending 100 hours in a presentation instead of
Mm-hmm.
working on their real jobs, right? But we always want that added human element. But I think to your point about the importance of brand, I don't know how companies I think unless you have some sort of brand that people are going to talk about, you tend to trade on price, which is always a race to the bottom. So I think the
Yeah.
work you're doing is so monumentally important for companies because if you can't define yourself and give your customers something to share, it's just too hard to pay for every customer. You just can't do it.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And bringing that human element is critical too. I equate it to like writing a book, and I've written a few books,
Uh-huh.
and that first draft is so freaking hard,
Right.
so exhausting. The editing then becomes fun. You
Well,
find your pace after you've regained your energy. What we have found with like our Story Cycle Genie is it does all that heavy lifting of identifying how you are currently showing up in the market with all the brand story elements, and then it's up to you, the humanoid, to say, oh, we're missing something here, or I hadn't thought about that,
right.
or I like this line, let's tweak it, to be a more powerful tagline or whatever it is. But yeah, I get you 80 to 90% there, and then you bring your human touch to it.
We literally say to I mean, you could be selling it. We literally say to our customers, we turn you from author to editor.
Yeah, that's it. That is
Right.
exactly it. So let's wrap up with 3 wisdom points
Oh,
from
shit.
Robert. So you've been a very successful startup guy. You say it's luck, but it's much more than luck. Yes, luck plays a role in it, but you've also got to be smart, prepared, have fun, not take yourself too seriously while taking the business seriously.
Yes.
So what are 2 or 3 things that our listeners could take away from between your ears that has worked for you that they could go out and test on their own brand?
So I think for us, the most important part of I think our success at all three of our companies has been speed. So from day one, we said it is really hard to be the smartest. So we're going to be the fastest. And that's been a really important part of our culture. So at Zeck, we're all remote, but at our prior 2 companies, one of the walls just said speed with about 1,000 E's. So that's always been most important to us. And then the second thing is having systems to be able to optimize for speed because I think systems get a bad rap. People think it creates bureaucracy. It actually makes everyone's job easier. And again, I mentioned this previously. We are maniacal about our systems. And then for us, it's all about having fun. We know that if everyone likes their job, they'll be better at it. So we really try to make it fun. And it's not, but again, we have systems to actuate that as opposed to just telling people when they're hired, we want you to have as much fun as possible. We are deeply involved in that process. And so that for us, fun systems and speed.
Okay. So I get the fun, I get the systems. Can we be a little bit more specific on speed? Is this speed to market, speed to brand out there? Is it speed to customer service? Is it all the above and then some?
I would say it's all the above and then some. So when we're communicating with our customers, we go they are blown away by how quickly we communicate with them and solve problems. It is the most important part of what we do. So whether it's talking to a customer after a demo when they have more questions, or working with an existing customer who wants the color of their chart changed, and we go do it for them because they're off in Brazil and can't get to their laptop, whatever it is. It's really everything. And also responsibly developing our roadmap as quickly as we can. So we're not going to put new features out there that are going to break, but we build very quickly and reply to the needs of our customers very fast when it comes to the feature set as well.
Well, that explains why you and Allison respond to emails within 1 hour. And
That's
we've
right.
had several of them in these exchanges, so I appreciate that. Thanks so much. And, Robert, thanks for taking the time to be here. This is fantastic. I know you're coming to us from Detroit.
Yes.
Good luck with your Lions coming
Lions.
up. We talked earlier. I'm a Seahawk fan, of course. We're not in the playoffs, but the Detroit team reminds me a lot of the Seahawks when they finally turned the corner and won the Super Bowl in 2013. Yep. So I'm pulling for you guys. You are my Seahawks for this tournament.
Yeah, it is super fun. It's great. Go Lions.
All right, Robert. Thanks so much. Have a great 2025 and best of luck with you and Zeck.
Thank you so much. You too.
Hey, thanks for listening to this edition of The Business of Story and sharing it with anyone you know who would benefit from Robert's insights. And if you could do me a huge favor, would you mind jumping over to iTunes and giving us a rating and review so that we can get more people thinking about us more often? I'd appreciate that. Hey, I hope you'll join me next Monday when my friend and client Aaron Godby will be with us. He is the founder and CEO of Green Irony, a Tampa, Florida-based AI company and one of Salesforce's premier implementers for their Agentforce AI. He's going to share with you how we use the story cycle system to help refine the Green Irony brand story and landed on this wonderful overall brand narrative of Green Irony, turning AI into actual intelligence that will then drive your business, right? So he is here and he's going to share with you how they're using their new refined brand story in their sales, in their marketing, and even recruiting top talent. I know you're going to love the show. So I want to give a big shout out to Caden Howell. Thank you so much for editing the show, and Darius Holbert for our marvelous music. And I want to remind all of you that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make that one epic. Thanks so much for listening.